In this video, we're taking a look at this, the free analog rack delay plugin for iPad or iPhone. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete and welcome back to Studio Live today, where my goal is to help you create, record and release your best music. And we are indeed creating music here on the iPad, and we're taking a look at this, a free delay plugin from Nembrini Audio. Now this one is super cool. You can see here we've got 4 different dials. We can sync it to the tempo of our track. We've got input and output. There's a bunch to get into. So let's stop talking and start listening to what this can do. Now, the best way to demonstrate a plugin is to actually use it on some tracks. So in this video, I'm going to show you this on some drums, on some bass, on some keys, and some vocals. And there's timestamps down in the description. So if you want to jump straight to one in particular, check the links down below. But let's kick off, pun intended, with a drum track. So I've soloed this track. It's a bit of an electronic beat. Let's hit play on this one. Bit of a disco kick and snare pattern going on there. So what we need to do to add this plugin is come over here to the left. Now we're going into the mixer icon, by the way. It's in the top left here, top right if you're on a smaller iPhone. We're going to tap plugins and EQ. We're going to hit edit, and then we're going to hit the plus button here. Come over to audio unit extensions, drop that down, and come on down here to these ones, the NA rack delay. And there it is. It's now been added to our track, and we can tap on the little N there, and here it is. Here's the interface. Now let's check this out left to right. We've got the time. That's how long the delay is actually going to be. A sync button to determine whether we want to sync it to the tempo of our track or leave it in milliseconds. We'll show you what that means in a moment. The offset is the left-right stereo offset, and we'll play around with that as well. Feedback is how much is actually going to be fed back. So how many times do you want this delay to repeat? Do you want it to go on for a long time or a short time? We've got the mix here, which is how much is actually going to be mixed in to our final sound. So that's the layout. Let's get in and start listening. So we've got it set to its default settings. Let's hit play on these drums. Now that's a very unique sound. It may not be something that you wanted to go for. If we hit done, if we bring this back into our mix here, it's going to sound like this. Yeah, like I say, interesting, but not what we'd want. So we've got a heap of control over this, though, that we can actually come in here and play with. So we'll go back to the plugin here. The first thing we want to look at is the time here. Now, if we bring this all the way up to like this, to like 1,000 milliseconds, which is a second, we're going to get a 1 second delay. Take a listen to how this sounds. Again, an interesting effect, not very musical, not something that you'd want. You can see there on the output, it's continuing to go and go and go because we've got a bit of feedback there. So we can do it that way. We can bring it right down. If you want to get like more of a slapback delay, you can bring it right down here and just put it down to like 3 milliseconds like that. Take a listen to this. So you almost get that phasing kind of effect because it's so close. The delay, the second one is hitting so soon after the first one. What if we bring it up to something like 44 milliseconds? Now we're talking. So now we're getting a little bit of a tighter kind of groove and a better sound here. Let's take a look at this next one here. The offset button here, we can actually make it more of a stereo sound. We can widen out the stereo delay here, or we can make it completely mono. Let's start it with 0 here. So you can hear it right up the middle as we bring the offset up. And as the offset goes up, you can hear that the delay between the left and right channels increases, and that gives you that wide stereo width kind of effect going on there. Let's bring the offset back down here. Now the feedback we showed you, or I talked about before, this is how much of the sound is going to feed back in. So if we only wanted to sort of hit again, once, we can have it right down here. And if we want to have a heap of big long tail of feedback, lots of delays, lots of different hits in here, we can bring it up here. And again, not very musical, but an interesting effect. You obviously can play around with that. And finally, just how much of this we want to mix in. So let's bring it back to something a little more sensible here. And then what we can do is if we have the mix all the way down, there's going to be no delay. Nothing there at all. If we bring it up here to say 50% in the mix, there's quite a bit of that delay. Let's bring the mix all the way up to 100%. The effect's going to be completely on our mix. A heap of it there. Very cool. That is the basics. We've also got presets. We can tap the default here, factory presets, a heap of presets that we can play around with there. We can also sync with our sound, but I'm going to wait until the next instrument to show you how we can use that. And that instrument is going to be this guitar loop. If we play this one, it sounds like this. So that's just a pretty basic kind of muted guitar sound, but what we can actually do is we can turn this on, come in here to our delay sound. Now we can use all the same controls we did before, but the one I didn't show you in the first instrument was this, the sync option. If we slide up this sync, you see here our time is no longer milliseconds, now it's in note lengths, and it goes everywhere from a 1/16th note here on the left-hand side, all the way around to a whole note there. So we'll show you a few of these here. By the way, the T is a triplet sound. The D is a dotted sound, which just changes the length of the notes. If you don't know about that, don't worry too much. Just experiment with it. Just find out what sounds cool. That is what a lot of mixing is all about. So let's start here by bringing it into an eighth note, which is a sort of delay that you generally use with pretty standard sort of instrument sounds like this. So let's hit play on this one. So you can hear that the second note is hitting on the eighth sounds. And if we bring the feedback up, we're going to get additional notes that are going to hit every eighth note. And it's going to end up sounding really weird and a bit like a loop here. But let's play this one. Again, interesting effects if you go too far, but yeah, you can see the point there. The other thing we can then do is obviously change this. If we wanted a really quick delay, let's bring it back to a 16th note and play on that one. You're getting more of that immediacy, and as we bring it on around to things like a quarter note, we get a sound like this. And quarter note and eighth note delays are used quite often in a lot of different types of music. Of course, you wouldn't generally have your mix up like that and your feedback up like that. If we brought it down more subtly, we had the mix at say 12% here, make it a little bit more stereo with the offset there, quarter note delay, and now if we hit play, oh, we're at the end of the guitar track. So you can hear there it's just creating that additional bit of ambience there. So used subtly, a delay plugin like this can be super cool on things like your guitars, as well as other instruments, which is a good segue into the next instrument, which is going to be this one, some chill key sound, just a little synth key sound here. Let's take a listen. Nice little flangey, chorusy, chilled key sound. Let's now tap here on the analog rack delay. Bring it in here. Now with this one, I'm thinking something like an eighth note delay would be cool. So let's put our sync back on and let's do an eighth note delay on here. Let's up the feedback quite a bit this time. Bring the mix down though, so we're only hearing a little bit of it. And yeah, we want to keep it reasonably mono there. So now if we hit play on this one, what do you think? I think that's pretty cool. Now you notice here that we've got input and output, so we can actually drag those up and down. So if the input coming in is too loud, we can actually reduce that down. And then if we make some changes here and then suddenly it's too loud coming out again, we can drop the output down here by doing that. The other thing I wanted to show you here is especially if you've got the sync off here and you want to dial this in milliseconds, you can actually tap in there and you can now actually type on the keyboard and actually put in the exact amount. Say we wanted exactly 13 milliseconds for some reason, we can dial in 13 milliseconds and then we've gone too far past. We can get exactly what we want there. Let's put the sync back on, turn it back to those eighth notes that we had here. Just make sure it's sounding good. Yep, that's cool. So if we hit done on that one, we'll bring this back into our mix. So now that we've affected the drums, the bass, and the keys, it sounds like these. So you can hear that. You can hear that just using this one very simple and free plugin, we've got some pretty cool sounds here. And there are other Nembrini plugins, by the way, that are paid plugins. There's a whole suite, the whole analog rack. So definitely check out the description, jump to the App Store, download this one, and check out the others as well while you're there. One more thing to go now, and that is, of course, our vocals. So let's jump in and look at how we can use delay on a vocal. All right, now if you've been here on the channel before, you know in these demo songs I like to have some fun with my vocals. So let's hit play on this vocal without any effects added. It sounds like this. Sometimes I sit and wonder at the world. There you go. And in fact, you can actually hear that there's already some effects on there because we have these master effects. Let's turn all that reverb and echo off just so that we get the full effect of what we're going to do here. So back to plugins and EQ, back in, well, turn it on first over here on the left, back into our analog delay. And what do we want with this one? I think something like let's go around to something a bit interesting. What about a half note delay? We'll bring it all the way around here to something like this. What's this going to sound like? Sometimes I sit and wonder at the world. That's kind of cool. I kind of like that. We'll drop the mix down so it's not going to sound quite as intense, but I'm going to go with something like that. So let's come down here. We'll hit done. We'll bring it back into our mix and we'll take a listen to this vocal sound now. Sometimes I sit and wonder at the world. Who's sitting back while it just gets unfurled? Yeah, cool. So what I would probably do there is drop the feedback down a bit. We probably only need about half the amount of feedback on that, and we'd probably even drop the mix even more just to make sure it's nice and subtle. Now I want to show you one cool bonus trick here before we finish up. We'll hit done on that one. We can actually layer up multiple effects. So what we can do is if we go edit, we've got enough spaces here that we can hit the plus button, we can go to audio unit extensions, and we can add in any other plugin or another instance of the exact same one. So why would we do this? Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this new plugin ahead of that one, because let's say you wanted to put like a bit of a slapback delay on to start with, and then you wanted to use something like that half note delay. Well, here's what we can do. Let's come in here. Firstly, we're going to add this slapback. So we're going to make sure sync is off, drop this down all the way down to maybe about 10 milliseconds, 13, that'll do us, 13 milliseconds, leave the feedback there, make sure the mix is there, we'll give it a bit of stereo offset for this sort of slapback delay, so just with this one, it's going to sound like this. Sometimes I sit and wonder at the world. So we've used this first delay to kind of thicken up the vocals a little bit, and now, if we bring back this one into our chain, and we bring both of these together, the vocals are going to sound like this. Sometimes I sit and wonder at the world. Who's sitting back while it just gets unfurled? So apart from the nonsense lyrics, how cool is that? So you can see here that even with just one vocal and a couple of delay plugins, you can create some stereo width, you can create some depth, and by layering up two of them, you can get a pretty cool and unique sound. There are 2 more videos linked down below about some other cool free plugins here in iOS. You can subscribe to the channel by clicking or tapping just up there, and I'll see you next time.